Hey guys, this is going to be my first YouTube video. Now, I may remake this or just take it down entirely in the future, but if you did enjoy this topic or find it interesting, please do subscribe, like the video, and comment if you agree or disagree with me, because I am very interested in discussing this topic with people who are more familiar with the franchise than I am. Now, you obviously are familiar with the Fallout franchise if you clicked on this video, or maybe you're just one of my friends from school who I said, hey, check out my YouTube channel, and you're realizing that you are probably not going to understand anything that's going on here. But the Fallout franchise, there is a very iconic piece inside of the games known as power armor. It's essentially a mechanized suit of armor that the United States military developed pre-war to fight against the Chinese and liberate Alaska. So we see multiple different suits in the Fallout games. In Fallout 1 we see the T-51B, in Fallout 2 we see the Enclave Advanced, in Fallout 3 we see the T-45D, in New Vegas we see, well, we don't actually get introduced to any new ones, and in Fallout 4 we get introduced to the T-60, and in 76 we get introduced to the T-65. We also see the Enclave's Hellfire and XO2 power armors in Fallout 3, but I won't be discussing those today. I do want to talk about, in particular at least, the T-60, T-65 and XO1 suits. Now, since the power armors that we see in the game are all military inventions, we have to apply what military development is like in the real world to the Fallout games. In the real world, it takes decades of research, of development, and of testing before they deploy any sort of new technologies into the military, unless you're China, in which case you'll just steal blueprints from the US. Sorry. But, so, we see that the T-51 power armor was deployed in 2076, during the liberation of Anchorage, which ended in early 2077. Before that, we have the T-45, which we don't actually know the development year of or deployment year of yet. But we do know that there was a amount of time between the two power armors where the T-45 was the only one in existence. Now, let's apply this internal realism to the game. The T-60 suit of power armor is described as a pre-war suit, and in a loading screen in the game, Fallout 4 at least, it says that it was a pre-war suit that saw extensive use by the United States military after the Battle of Anchorage, and that it was used to keep the peace during the civil unrest that happened on the day that America fell to atomic war. Now, the T-45 power armor, we don't know the development year of, so we could say that there are about, 10 years, let's say, is a good amount of time. 10 years between that and the T-51. But in less than a year from the deployment and first usage of the T-51 power armor in 2077, when the Battle of Anchorage ended, that's when the T-60 started to be used. Why would they develop the T-51 at all if they were only going to use it for a single campaign? Also, the T-60 is described as having extensive use, but we see suits in the prologue to the game, which is set before the war. We see these suits being used to keep the peace. So maybe they only had enough suits to be able to test them out in the Washington and in the Boston areas. But if they only had enough suits for limited testing here, why do we find these suits scattered around the Commonwealth after the war? And why is there also a large enough stockpile somewhere in DC that the entire East Coast Brotherhood of Steel and the East Coast Brotherhood of Steel outcasts can use them? This leads to a bit of a break in the timeline where we see an entire 9 models of power armor just gone through in an entire year or less. So, and then have enough of these suits of power armor to be able to have a huge stockpile somewhere in DC, although why they would have a stockpile in DC and not over on, the West Coast, which is where the Chinese are closer to, is, well, it's unexplained. Now, there's also the problem with the T-65 in Fallout 76. In Fallout 76, the T-65 is described as a pre-war set in the wiki. I haven't played Fallout 76 yet, so I cannot tell you if any of this is actually true or not. I'm basing this off of the wiki, which is an open public forum, so please do understand if I get anything wrong here and correct me in the comments. It's described as a pre-war suit of power armor, which is only the schematics are available in the game. But this leads to an even larger break of internal realism, where we see this leads to a break in internal realism in terms of the fact that they went through another 5 models on top of the 9 already before the war. Now you only receive the schematics in the game, so it's a bit more acceptable than T-60 in Fallout 4, but it still doesn't seem realistic that the US military would be able to go through 14 models in less than a year. Now we move on to the XO1 suit of power armor. In Fallout 2, a new suit of power armor was introduced called the Enclave Advanced, which I've seen many people online say is their favourite suit of power armor. And in Fallout 3, the suit was not present. Instead, the Enclave had the XO2 power armor and the Hellfire. These suits were both made by Bethesda for the game, and the Enclave Advanced would not see its return until Fallout New Vegas in 2010. So, what I'm guessing is that the XO1, which is a pre-war suit and is extremely similar to the Enclave Advanced, Bethesda wanted to put the Enclave Advanced into the game because fans obviously were quite fond of the suit and wanted to see its return. So they put the XO1 into the game as a pre-war set, which it is. It's very likely, that this suit was in development pre-war by the United States military, but had not seen deployment yet. We see this in the fact that there is a suit of XO1 in a glass shielding in the Nuka World DLC, which is referenced in pre-war diary entries or documents, whatever you want to call them, throughout the park. So, knowing this, it's likely that what Bethesda wanted to do was they wanted to put the Enclave Advanced into the game, but rather than say that the Enclave had brought suits over from the West Coast, where they'd lost, over to the East Coast, rather they put in this, maybe because they thought it was a slightly better explanation that the Enclave used the XO1 as their basis for the Advanced, rather than just putting the Advanced in the game. they could have just said that they could have just put the advanced in the game and not had it as the XO1 power armor and just had it as the Enclave Advanced, and said that when the Enclave moved over to the to the East Coast from the West Coast, they dumped these suits as they had developed new, better models. This, again, the fact that they've developed now 3 new models, one of which is entirely dissimilar from the others, pre-war, during the span of less than a year, with a large enough stockpile of T60 to keep hidden somewhere in DC, a large enough amount of XO1 and T60 to have scattered throughout the Commonwealth, and also to be able to spare a model as a propaganda piece in a soft drinks theme park, and to be able to have the schematics for an entirely new model, all makes it seem a little unrealistic. Now, I know what you're thinking about Fallout. Oh, but there's super mutants, there's ghouls, there's this, there's that, and that's all not realistic. Yes, but it's based in reality so much that it could be seen as realistic. The super mutants are only because of the FEV, Forced Evolutionary Virus, which I won't go into that because it's an extremely long, detailed story, but in Fallout 1, you go to the West Tech and Mariposa military base, and you find documents about about the FEV virus, and it's so detailed and so heavily based in reality that you could see it as a invention in the future. Same with power armor, the difference being that going through 14 models in less than a year, in the military, mind you, with large stockpiles and an entirely new line as well, during the middle of a war, does seem a little bit unrealistic. Now, there are 2 other problems with power armor in Fallouts 4 and 76. The first being the power option. In the first Fallout game, when you go to the West Tech facility where they developed power armor, you see that power armor has an inbuilt fusion generator, I believe it's called, an inbuilt fusion generator which powers it for almost 100 years. Now, in Fallout 76 and 4, you have to use a fusion core, which is not an internal thing. You put it in and out like a battery in the flashlight, and it runs out in less than 100 years. They could fix this, however, by saying that the T60 was the only suit of power armor with this as its option of power, and have it have some more appealing benefits over the other suits of power armor in the game to make people choose it despite its odd power option. But this breaks the law of every single previous Fallout game where there was an inbuilt generator of power which powered the suit, and you did not have to replace fusion cores. I think that this was done in response to the next problem, which is the fact that the suits are scattered throughout the Commonwealth and you can just enter them willy-nilly. In Fallouts 3 and New Vegas, to be able to enter power armor, you needed a perk called Power Armor Training. I think that this was done in Fallout 3 due to the fact that quite early on, I think the 3rd quest in the main storyline, you can find a dead Brotherhood soldier with a suit of power armor on, and so the Power Armor Training mod was put into the game so that players wouldn't be able to just find this dead Brotherhood soldier and put on the T-45 and be able to walk through the game very easily. So I think that it was a good addition to the game, and it returns in Fallout New Vegas, where to get power armor training you have to either do a bunch of quests for the Brotherhood of Steel, or do Arcade Ganon's companion quest. In Fallout 4 and 76, however, anyone can enter power armor. You can have a suit of power armor with a fusion core in it whilst your settlement is being attacked by raiders in Fallout 4, and a farmer who has never seen a laser rifle before in their entire life, let alone a suit of power armor or something nearly as advanced as that, can just enter it and walk around in it and use it quite easily to smash the raiders. As well as that, I think that this was done because Bethesda put in the customization options for power armor, where you can have a T-45 legs with Exo-1 arms, a T-60 chest piece, and a Hellfire headgear, or helmet, sorry. And you could also have different paint jobs for it. I don't think they wanted the suits to be very rare, so that people would have to be limited in what they could choose for the customization. I think that was the reason for them putting these suits scattered throughout the Commonwealth, and I think that they, as well as that, they wanted to have players be able to just grab them and go, rather than be like, oh, I need to get this, I don't have power armor training yet, I'll later in the game before I can get that and come back for this suit here, because players would likely forget about it. Which is the lead up to the reason I think they put in the fusion core, which limits the use of power armor, as a fusion core lasts for a limited amount of time, and once it's gone you cannot use the power armor anymore. A simple fix for this would be saying that the sole survivor was a male, due to the fact that the sole survivor as a male used to be a United States Army soldier, so that could be how they were able to use power armor throughout the game, because they already had previous training, instead of a female sole survivor who was a lawyer, which I think it's quite obvious why a lawyer would be able to use an advanced piece of military technology there. Now, then there's also the problem with the T-60 and T-65. I think that they put those in the game due to the fact that they feel that every Fallout game needs a new set of power armor. In Fallout 1 there was the T-45, and they introduced the Advanced in Fallout 2. They then introduced the T-45 in Fallout 3, which was originally going to be in Fallout Van Buren, the cancelled original Fallout 3. And they had the Midwest Brotherhood suit of power armor in Fallout Tactics, which is, however, non-canon, I do believe now. And they had introduced the riot gear, the NCR riot gear, in Fallout New Vegas. It isn't a suit of power armor, however. It is, however, a suit of armor, which is an iconic piece of Fallout media now, used by the NCR as for their most elite troops, such as how power armor is used by the most elite Brotherhood troops and by the Enclave foot soldiers too. I feel that they just want to introduce new suits of power armor because they want to put it on the box art and think it's cool, rather than because it's necessary or because it helps with the plot of the games. I think a change to this would be in Fallout 5 by retconning it so that the Brotherhood only discovered parts of schematics for the T-60, which was in very, very early development, pre-war, somewhere in the Pentagon whilst they were digging through its ruins. We also learned from Paladin Dance that the Brotherhood now has the capabilities to build and produce their own power armors after defeating the Enclave on the East Coast. So they could say that they took these schematics and then improved upon them with their sets of T-45 and also their Enclave sets that they've captured, and used it to make a new set of power armor, the T-60. However, they were not able to reproduce the power capabilities of the previous models without completely taking apart their T-45 suits, which they could not do in case the T-60 was a dead-end bust, so they had to use fusion cores instead. This, I think, would be a good explanation, and it would show that the Brotherhood, at least Maxon's Brotherhood, since Owen Lyons died in Fallout, or between the events of Fallout 3 and 4, and it would be able to show that Elder Maxon really is going back to the old traditional ways of the Brotherhood, recovering technology and building new technology, which is what they did in the original Fallout, where they were building new weapons as well. And it could also show that this is an explanation for why the Brotherhood outcasts, who disagreed with Lyons's philosophy of protecting the citizens of the wasteland and giving them clean water and destroying the super mutants rather than recovering technology, rejoined the Brotherhood because they saw this as an act of recovering and making new technology, and a step, in their eyes, in the right direction. Now, this is all just my opinion, of course. Maybe you think that the changes to power armor in Fallout 4 and 76 were a good addition, and that the T-60 and T-65 don't break the law, and changing the Enclave Advance to the XO1 was a good idea. Maybe you believe that, and if you do, please comment below if you do agree or disagree with me. I have, hopefully, at least, more videos coming soon, and I'm extremely excited about them. So I do hope that you subscribe and make sure to turn the notifications on. And thank you very much for watching.